All right, so let's start on this site plan. It's at a pretty small scale. Couple things to notice about it. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 buildings on it. Some are dashed, which I guess are maybe for the future, but I want you to put them all in there. We've also got a bunch of buildings down here. Again, it's at a small scale. If you look here, you'll see detention basin. That's not a building, so don't draw it as one. If you screw up and do it, you can. But where I would start with this is I would go ahead, because these buildings are pretty straightforward and simple, I'm just going to go ahead and profile the buildings. I'm going to need a triangle to do it. Spread all my stuff out. This will be fun. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to profile my building.
Why is this site plan so small?
What's that?
Why is this site plan so tiny?
Well, it was originally meant for 11 by 17, but that's okay. You can do tiny. It's we'll see what the odds are of me not drawing the detention basins as a building.
What is this? What's a site plan of? I haven't even looked at it.
It's a proposed housing development in Manchester. Suzanne worked on this one and gave it to me. So blame Suzanne. Who has anybody talked to Suzanne? You'll find her. What's funny is, so when I first started working here, the gentleman who ran, is Bob Pollock still teaching?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Bob used to be the head of the department and was for a long time. Bob decided he didn't want to do that. And Bob had tried for years to get a associate's program here, because when I first started, it was just a continuing ed program. So you couldn't get a degree with this. And Bob left being the head of department. He still taught, but he really didn't want to be in charge of the whole shebang anymore. And Suzanne took over, Suzanne Smith-Meyer. And she wound up powering through changing it to an associate's program. I'm sure I asked when we first got here, but how many here are taking the associate's program? 1, 2. All right, so it varies year to year, but it's nice to have that option. And Suzanne got it through, and she did it. She ran the program for quite a while. And then we had a couple years where we had really low enrollment throughout the whole college. And it was mainly a demographic thing, because there's just not that many young folks in New Hampshire anymore. And there were a couple years where not a lot of people graduated from New Hampshire high schools. Enrollment went down, they had to consolidate funds and cut back. So what they did is they no longer had Suzanne be the head of the department, and they merged it with the architectural department. So Liaquat Khan is the head of the department, and Suzanne is just an instructor like me, and you'll get her depending on how far you want to take this, but you will potentially get Suzanne. I'm probably not going to do those buildings over there. I'm just going to focus on the ones close. But what was funny is when I had to call out for COVID, and she hasn't been ahead of the department for years, and she used to assist me too, which they don't do that much anymore. It started when if I had more than like 6 students, I got Suzanne as an assistant, and then it was 7, and then it was 10, and now I have to have 75 people that sign up before they'll give me an assistant. But so she's the one, if you see her, you can blame her for this site plan. But what's funny is when I called out for COVID, they said, well, you have to get in touch with your department head. And I said, oh, Liaquat? And she said, oh, no, let me look it up. No, that's Suzanne. So I said, oh, good, I like Suzanne. I've talked to her forever. So I called Suzanne and I said, "Hey, Suzanne, did you know you're still head of the department?" She said, "I haven't been head of the department for like 6 years, Peter." I said, "You might want to call the office and let them know." So I wound up having to let Leocket know just the same. All right, I just put all my buildings in there. I thankfully didn't do the detention pond. Now I want to get the roads in. And again, the first thing I'm going to do is a fair amount of curves in these roads, but I don't want to show the roads where the trees are, so let's go ahead and put the trees in first. I'm going to use my little cheap trees.
Everyone says Suzanne has very strong opinions
Of what's that, the trees?
about all plants, just plants in general. Do you find that to be the case?
That everybody has strong
That
opinions?
Suzanne specifically does.
Yes, and I think she does. I don't know for certain because I've never taken her class, but I know she has strong opinions in general,
Nice.
and that's okay.
I love that.
Then you're going to love Suzanne. I mean, if she feels something isn't appropriate, she will not hesitate to share that with you.
Good. I love that.
Oh, brace you. Be careful what you dream of.
I can disagree. I like when people have a strong
She's got
opinion.
a strong opinion.
Yeah.
She's been doing this for, I mean, I have
Oh, totally.
no opinion when it comes to plants because I have no idea.
You have to have picked up some stuff. You've been drawing trees forever.
But usually I'm drawing I do conceptual site plans and I show green blobs all over. And then we wind up bringing in, if it's complicated at all, I bring in a landscape architect, or sometimes there are a lot of times where the contractor will do it with an allowance and the contractor will bring in a landscape architect. I brought in Suzanne on a few of my projects, but they're actually few and far between. I just don't, and unfortunately for you folks, what happens is, as bad as architecture is for this, in that everybody likes to say, "Oh, that building's beautiful and we love the way you drew it and it's everything we wanted." And then the contractor tells them what it's going to cost, and they're like, "Okay, well, let's get rid of everything nice, and because we just want it bigger." And it's horrifying. So a lot of my nice stuff never survives the budget. It's even worse for landscape architects because they're all like, "Oh yeah, we'll hire the gardening club to come in and we'll get the gardening club to do it for free later on." It's like, no. And what's sad is that enlightened clients know that $10,000 worth of landscaping or $20,000 worth of landscaping can really go a long ways in making a really crappy $2 million building look a lot better. If you do nice landscaping by your entry and a couple other things, it just changes the flavor of the building. And if it's a weak building to begin with, well, the statement used to be, "Surgeons bury their mistakes, architects plant ivy." So again, weak parts of your building, you can cover up with a lot of landscaping. And it all of a sudden, rather than putting an $800,000 entry on it, you put $30,000 worth of well thought out plants and the entry looks nice all of a sudden. And it makes a huge difference. There are places where condo developments in particular, and right now it doesn't matter because it's such a seller's market still, but when times go bad, having curb appeal can mean the difference between you selling and you not selling. And that can make a huge difference. Right now, it doesn't matter if it's got a roof and 4 walls, you can sell it. Is it habitable? Yes. All right, good. Can we get an inspection? No. You just have to either, if you don't like it based on your 6-minute visit, we're going to sell it to the other guy next to you. But those days will end, they always do. At which point, having some nice landscaping can really help move your project. I'm preaching to the choir here. But I too like having decent landscaping on my projects.
So who are the clients for things like this?
What clients will you have?
Yeah, what clients do you have?
Architecturally?
Yeah,
Cities.
and also what clients will we have?
Okay. I wind up having, I do institutional is probably a city, state, federal, towns. I do a lot. 99% of my work is publicly funded one way or another. I've done a lot of work for towns. I think I got all those. I've done a fair amount of work for the state of New Hampshire. I've done some work with federal money, but not the bulk of it. But again, towns, I used to do a lot of libraries. Done libraries all over the state. Done a bunch of bus stations. I recently did a fire station. I've done a couple, I'm working on a police station, and I've done like 3 of those. So that kind of thing.
Did you do the Newbury fire station? I saw that. I scrolled all the way down on your YouTube. You did that one?
Tell me you love it. Yeah,
I
tell me.
haven't seen it yet.
It's
Newbury, New Hampshire?
yeah. Well, you're gonna get drone videos of construction, and there's one in there having a blast in Newbury that you have to watch, and realize that I took the profanity out of it. It was the fire station was on a sloping site. We basically removed a quarter of a mountain. And the mountain was, of course, made of granite because we're in New Hampshire, so they had to do a lot of blasting. And I was there for one of the blasts, and I videoed it with my phone.
Nice.
And I've seen, excuse me, it's not like I haven't seen blasting before, but this is pretty awesome. and you should have seen it. We were all at the job trailer, and they were doing it probably 300 yards away from us. And we were like, whoa! Everybody was pretty excited about it. And you'll see when you watch the video. It's not very long, and then I messed with the video, and I had fun.
I subscribed. I'll watch all your videos.
Oh,
I'll watch
yeah.
the ads all the way through. Let's see if we can make you some money.
Well, no, I haven't gotten any yet. What do you have to have, like 10,000 subscribers or something before they pay
I
you?
have no idea.
It's
I'm not a YouTuber.
my I only was because of class and drone videos. All right, I just put all the trees in. I'm now going to put the property line in. Now, there's also a tree line that goes through here. I believe that is an edge of forest line. You might want to draw all those trees in. I'm certainly not going to this evening because, well, I hate to say it, we might be. It's only 8:15.
There is a swampy area on that right side of the property.
Right here, wetlands. I'd go ahead and put a lot of trees in there. Maybe, well, let's see what we can do. Let's have some fun. Hang on a minute. Let me get the rest of it.
How do you represent different stuff? So it's a wetland. How do you show that it's a little bit different than like a forest?
It's,
Obviously the trees, duh, that seems dumb, but like.
well, again, I think it would depend on, if I was just doing a presentation drawing, a pretty picture, it would depend. There are wetlands that are in the woods, and there are wetlands that are total swamps. If it was swamps, I'd make it look like grass. If it was in the woods, I'd put a lot of trees in. I may or may not even put a border on it to show where the wetlands are. I might do, there'll be some drawing if the client needs to know where the wetlands are, and that usually comes up. I would put something on there to show it, but I wouldn't worry about it. Like I said, if you know it's if it's a swampy wetland without a lot of trees, it's just going to look like grass in your plan. If it's a forested wetland, then it's going to look like forest. And Newbury, the fire station, had a fair amount of wetlands, but it was all in the woods. I mean, you wouldn't look at it, you wouldn't know, unless you're very familiar with wetlands, where they were. But a soil scientist, you start looking for ferns, and a soil scientist can nail it right away. And we had to work around that because it's New Hampshire.
But generally clients they're not gonna care.
Well, again, it depends on what you're doing with the drawing.
Okay.
My drawings tend to be more for information to get people a rough idea. When I do a site plan, I'll show you the Newbury Fire Station in a few minutes. When I do a site plan, I tend to show, let's get some trees in here. When I do a site plan, again, it's very simplified, it's basic to just give people an idea of where the building's gonna go, where the parking's gonna be, what I'm changing, if I'm knocking down other buildings. So it's a very graphic representation. Now, what will happen is usually to get the thing built, you'll need an engineered drawing showing what's really going on, and that will indicate where the wetlands are and what the grades are, and it's not as pretty. And I tend to do, my presentation drawings are normally for like town meeting approval, so it's got to go to a bond vote.
Mm-hmm.
So
you're wanting to make it look real pretty.
they're going to want to see it pretty, and again, they don't want to see. It doesn't mean anything. If I showed you a civil set of drawings, you guys will get familiar with them from working on them. But to a layman, to look at a civil set of drawings, they can barely tell where the building is.
Yeah.
It's just a bunch of lines. Well, you look at this. Until I drew those buildings on there, did you know those were buildings? It's so that's what I'm trying to do, and that's what I simplify. And again, it serves a purpose. I can't hand this to a builder and say, well, go ahead and build this. Although they've built from less. They'll complain about the quality of the drawings that I'll do, but if you tell them, you can do this job, but you've got to provide all the drawings, you should see what they can build from. It's scary when they have to pay for the drawings, how basic the drawings are. And I know because I've done that too, or I've been hired by contractors on occasion, and they don't need much. But yeah, it's fun. But yeah, your clients, now what Suzanne winds up doing is she'll do, a little bit of everything. And when I say that, Suzanne does, there are a lot of people that just do residential design. Suzanne is not that, but she will do residential. She'll do residential. She's done a lot of playgrounds. I think she teamed up with someone and they were doing playground design for a while. And, she'll work for civil engineers. She's done that. So she's kind of covered the gamut. She's been around for a while. I don't want to say that like she's ancient, but she's pretty old now. Hopefully she's not watching this. She's even older than me, and that's inexcusable. But yeah, but she's done a lot, and when having her as an assistant in this class, as much as helpful as it was for the graphics, because if I have a big class, it's just tough for me to get to everybody that's got questions, and it's nice to have Suzanne floating around. But more importantly, I think, was she could answer questions about the program that I can't. I have no idea what you're taking next year. I don't know what you have to take. I come in one class a year in the spring, and that's it. Suzanne was pretty good at getting answers for that and landscape questions. You know, you mentioned, does she have opinions on trees? And, you know, I didn't, and I didn't know anything. People are like, well, should you use this here? And I'm like, I don't know, is it green? Sounds good to me.
You're not the landscaper, yeah.
You know, on this plan it
You need
works
the right
well.
plant in the right
Is it
place.
colored
Yeah.
green in the summer? Does it conduct photosynthesis? If the answer is yes, then my answer is yes.
Yeah, and Suzanne is going to have some very big opinion. Well, where Suzanne goes off, it's great fun. Two things that'll get you in trouble with Suzanne. One, and I don't know if she's still doing it, but she was on the Concord Design Review Committee,
Yeah.
which was lovingly referred to as the Taste Police. Yeah.
Oh my God, I love that.
Yeah. So she did that. So she would butt heads with people a lot on that and
Yes,
be
I think
like,
she's
yeah,
still
you're
doing it.
you're not getting away with putting that in my town.
Planning board meeting.
Love it.
Yeah. And this was design review. So, you know, most planning boards, they might think the building's ugly, and if they do, you're going to have a tougher time getting it through, but they can't really say, you know, we think it's ugly. But in Concord, they specifically have a design review board, and they can say, you know what, this is horrible. Don't even try it.
Was that about clock towers?
Oh, there was a battle on the clock tower.
Wait. What are the things that will get me in trouble? What does she not like?
I don't
You
know.
said two things that will get you in trouble.
Okay,
Suzanne.
one is bad design. I mean, if it's ugly buildings, she will not spare your feelings. Second is invasive species.
Okay, good.
Show up
We can agree.
at a planning board meeting with an invasive species on your planning plan. Not a good idea. Not a good idea. Because they demand, they demand planting plans. And she's had people show up with invasive species. And I'd be willing to bet they'll never do that again.
They can't get them anyways.
It's,
Well, you can.
You can't buy burning bushes. You can't sell them. They're not for sale like at nurseries. You can move them from someplace else illegally, but yeah.
Well, you can, a lot of times,
well, trust me,
you can order them.
you're not going to want to show them on your planning plan if you're taking it to Suzanne's planning board, because she will come down on you with the wrath of God.
Good.
It's
I accidentally got
yeah, she's
throw them away or
Good.
she doesn't mess around.
Yeah. That's a big deal.
She will kick ass and take names. God bless her. So, nice buildings. Well, for you in the class, nice buildings aren't, I mean, you're probably not going to be doing a lot of buildings, so that doesn't matter. But boy, I wouldn't put an invasive species on a project I was turning into her.
No, I wouldn't be caught dead.
No, it's, you'll get a talking to. Like I said, you won't do it
Looking through the
twice.
slides in Joe's class too.
Yeah.
It's,
That one's on the watch list.
Mm.
Those,
If she
Fuzzy,
hates them that
little
much, she
gray
probably
hair.
doesn't like the watch list ones either. Yeah, don't even touch them.
Ghost of Rose.
Yes. Have you had a class with her, Suzanne?
No.
No.
I think the way it works, you get her second year, and this is a prerequisite.
Okay. For the design studio.
Yeah, is it small scale design? Does that sound familiar? Small scale planting design?
No, I think it is landscape design studio.
Is it landscape design?
Which I think might be 200.
I just put the property line in. I'm gonna go ahead and put my trees. And they're little. How are we doing? All right, good. We're gonna get something here.
My family was looking at my plan. And they were like, "Are those umbrellas?" So I changed how my trees look.
Well, and I will tell you that what will happen when you start putting color in, they won't ask that question anymore. It's and if I can draw these quick enough, I'll show you the Newbury site plan. If I can find the Newbury Fire site plan. And I don't think I showed wetlands on it. But I've got a lot of the trees.
So do
And
you come up with the design for the building?
Yes, typically.
That's pretty cool.
It's fun. It can be. It's a double-edged sword. Very rarely does your initial. How do I put it? When I took ceramics classes in college, what they said to me was, never fall in love with your pot. And that was because you would throw a pot on the wheel and you would be like, this is the most awesome pot I've ever thrown. It's going to be wonderful. Well, you had to let the pot dry out and become greenware. And if it had a bad attitude, it would just crack then. And you'd be very sad. But when you were done, anybody done ceramics at all?
Yes.
Yeah. But there's about 7 different steps that can be terminal for your pot. You know, you have to fire it 2 or 3 times. Any one of those, it could just explode in the kiln and take out other pots with it.
Yeah.
So you learn that until you had it in your hand, you didn't get too attached to it. And what I found in my buildings is the great idea that I had at first will often get beat out of the process. So I try and make the best and give as much love as I can throughout. But if I were to show you initial sketches of some of these projects, you'd be like, why didn't they do that? And I'd say, well, you would have to ask them. Money is quite
I want to see the
often.
dream sketches.
Hmm?
I want to see the dream sketches.
I-
like the
I-
perfect,
I'd-
like,
I'd have to-
response from most situations like that is to just say people are weird and leave it at that.
It's, well, and a lot of it's money.
Yeah.
You know, I've had many of them just gutted by money, and I've had some that, again, I've liked where they've gone. I've been dragged into renovations that I've said, hey, this isn't a great idea. I don't really think you want to be working on this. But they're like, no, it's going to come fine. And I do as best that I can, but usually it's a small consolation to say at the end, I told you so. Because I'm the one, it's got my name on it. But there's some that have turned into fun little victories. Have you seen, the bus station in Concord? I did that. I won an award for that. That was a fun one. And if you look at that bus station, if you're coming on the highway and you look, coming from the south and going north, if you look behind it up on the hill, you'll see the Swenson Granite Quarry. And that's where the granite for that bus station came from.
That's cool.
It is kind of cool.
That is super cool.
It's
It's the one you can see from the highway. I'm not from here, so I don't know.
it's right on the, it's like right on the highway.
That thing is sweet. It's all lit up.
Right
Yeah.
there.
Yeah, it is really cool looking. When I started coming up here, I was like, oh, what is that?
It was a fun project, and it was a very strange project. It was one of my first state projects. Before I get all wrapped up on the bus station, which I will do. Next thing, what should we be thinking about doing next? Any thoughts?
Texture.
Shadows.
Texture?
Shadows.
Shadows are next. The reason I say shadow before textures is because if the building catches on fire, and what I'm going to do with shadows, because this one is weird, because these buildings are at different angles, I'm going to go ahead and do what I showed you to do that I said I never do anymore because I'm too good, but I'm not that good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick up my drawing. The bus station was, we got our first 2 projects for the state. There were 2, Tom and I, this was back when it was Tenant Wallace, before it was Tenant Goucher. And Tom and I had been trying to get an in with the state of New Hampshire and get some state work forever. And we just weren't having any luck with it. And then finally, and one of Tom's original partners had angered the state long ago, so it wasn't looking good for us. But we kept trying, and then we got brought in to interview for 2 projects. One was a police station in Epping, and the other was a bus station. And they asked us during the interview, which one would you rather do? And the bus station was called a functional replacement. Notice what I did is I shifted the drawing, and you can see where the buildings are underneath, so I know which side the shadows go on. So they asked us, they said, well, it was a functional replacement with a budget of like $150,000, and it was replacing a trailer that they had in a parking lot downtown. It had no budget, and it was just going to be a little tiny thing. And they asked us, which one would you prefer, the two projects? And we said, well, we like either project, but we talked about it on the ride up here, and we decided that we'd kind of like to do the bus station, because it seems like it's kind of a, we're trying to get people off the highways, and this could be a fun thing to do. And it turns out we were the only ones that picked the bus station. And we almost didn't get it.
Oh my God, why not?
They almost gave it to someone else, and one of the people there said, for the love of God, they're the only ones that said they wanted to do it. So we did it, and it was supposed to be this little rinky-dink project. And we go, and in the meantime, by the way, before we even had our first meeting, they called us up and said, well, you got the bus station. And we said, oh, we're delighted, that's great. And then they call us up and they say, do you want to do the police station? And we said, you mean instead of the bus station? And they said, no, and the bus station. And I said, well, yeah, sure, we'll do that. And they said, good. If you can sign a contract in the next 4 hours, you can have it. That's another story that I'll tell you all about. But we got the bus station still. So we go to the first job meeting, and we based our fee on this $110,000 project. Granted, this was quite a while ago, but that was about the budget that we had. And the first meeting, the head of the Department of Transportation, who was a bit of a wild man, walks in and he says, you know what? He says, I want someone in a suit driving on 93, going to work, to look over at this bus station and think, that wouldn't be a bad alternative to driving down here to get to work, he says. And I'm going to use profanity. He says, I don't care what it costs. I'll fucking get the money. All right? Tom and I were beside ourselves on the ride home. I'm like, did he just give us a blank check? And sure enough, they did. They quadrupled our budget and just said, go wild, have fun. So I brought in the granite from Swenson. I have the cow wall roof that's lit up.
That is so cool.
And if you look at it coming from the south, if you're going north at night, you'll notice that it all looks the same. It all looks like the same level of brightness. Well, that's insulated glass panels over the building part, and it's uninsulated over the bus part. So there's very little, and it has very different light levels. And my electrical engineer's he says, oh, I can take care of that. So he's very specifically tuned the lights in the building to be just enough brighter so that they look the same as the lights outside that are firing into it. So it looks pretty, if you look at it close, you can tell they're two different systems, but it looks like one just floats there. The commissioner, they had, God bless the state, it was a big parking ride. This was part of a parking ride. And so it's gonna be a huge parking lot that you see out there, and they had to light it. Well, this is the way PSNH or Eversource and the state light big things. They put a pole that's 700 feet tall, and they put one big bright light on it. And we were like, well, I'm gonna be lighting up this roof. And we convinced them they dropped all the street lights. So now they had to go 50 lights, and they're all below my roof. So my roof just floats up there, which was nice. We got the granite, we got rubber floors in it. We just had a lot of fun. All right, now I put the shadows on. Texture, I'm just gonna put some grass on it. Oh, I'm missing some of this. Oh, I shifted it. Ah, that's scary. Let's see if I can get it. back where it's supposed to be. So yeah, the police station, I was just like, they're like, if you want it, you can come have it. And I said, well, okay, do-de-do-de-do. I show up at the meeting, the first job meeting, and I find out that the reason we got it was because the original architect had done a project, had done a design for them, and it cost like 10 times the money. This was part of a eminent domain. The state was widening a road in Epping, and they were annihilating the existing police station. The existing police station was about the size of, from me to that wall and that wall to here. It was an abandoned car repair shop. It was just a concrete block box with a chain link fence cage on the inside of it and like a desk. And the architects that they originally hired had this like $500,000 law enforcement state-of-the-art facility that they're expecting the state to pay for, and the state was like, no. And they got into a huge fight with the state and with the selectmen, and they wound up getting kicked off the job. And so the town was pissed, the state was pissed, the cops were pissed. I knew none of this. I just signed the contract and showed up for the first meeting, and everybody was like, there was one cop, Henry, Sergeant Henry, who just steered the whole thing through. He just said, we're gonna make this a good project no matter what it takes, and he did. And it was good fun. He said, oh, we can live with your budget, we'll do whatever it takes, this is a big benefit for the town, and I wanna be a part of it, and he did it. So it was, but it was exciting when I learned what was really happening that nobody shared with me when I signed the contract.
Otherwise, they probably would have scared you off of it.
It's, yeah, it all worked out in the end, though. And I would wind up getting another police station and yet another police station, partially because I had experience on police stations. But Newbury Fire was a lot of fun. I've had a lot of fun in Newbury. All right, I'm gonna put some grass in, and I would probably call it.
Do you think it's a worthwhile strategy putting like double thick grass where the swampy areas are, just to try to show that distinction?
Nope. I think it's gonna draw too much attention to it, but maybe we could try it and see. You want me to get something on that? Let me get the grass in first and see if there's anything I could do to kind of hint that it's a wetland.
Yeah, because if it just looks like lawn,
It's, I mean, what I could do is I could, in color, I could put a different shade of green over it or something like that, something subtle, but
You could just do dots on it. Just like add dots between the grass, just show that there's a little bit more.
might do, let me see what I can do. Let's see if we can get in trouble, ruin a drawing. It's always good fun. I think this has been built, by the way. It's, or parts of it. This is some housing off the highway. I think 93 is somewhere around here, and this is in Manchester. All right, so how do we do that? Well, how about this?
apartment complex for the sketches is gonna be a nightmare.
Now, there's a symbol for wetlands that looks sort of like that, but I wouldn't use that.
On the map, don't they have like little tiny plants?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like my,
So, thing for design, yeah.
it's,
Oh, it doesn't look that nice.
Yeah, that doesn't give wetlands to me.
Yeah.
and it's computer generated, so it's all very,
Yeah, exactly the same.
yeah, which,
It's also usually a link.
I don't know, does this suck? Let's see. I think it needs a little more. Because if it looks bad to begin with, adding more to it will always make it better. See, the problem is it comes close to this property line. It's not horrible. It would do.
I like it.
Kind of hints at it. I don't want to do any more, 'cause-
Yeah.
but it kind of lets you know something's going on there.
So that's better than just regular grass.
Yes.
Well, everybody has mixed feelings on the regular grass anyway.
I'm sold on the grass now. I've changed my tune.
You're coming around?
Yeah.
Takes a while.
I'm not sure what was
Takes
the
a
other
while.
thing that you were saying that people don't like. Oh yeah, the stripe, the lines.
Yeah, the background stripe, I was just gonna say,
Yeah,
there's
jury's out
the,
on that still, but
there's the
Yeah.
two
I'll do a
things
couple
that,
more
that just
these things.
What is that? supposed
anger my students, and the grass and the background stripe are the two of them.
You know. Yeah.
And you, by the way, are the first group that's really complained a lot about the roof. But
You complain about the roof? Wait, what about the roof?
the EKG lines,
Oh, I just think
that
I
one,
didn't
that's a
even-
new one. I haven't had people complain about that.
What I don't like about the way that I'm drawing is that like yours are very like you're getting these tiny little points, and mine are either like too rounded and they look all like fluffy and girly, or they're like huge spikes. It's just practice.
Yeah, and part of it is getting the confidence to be loose with your pen.
Yes.
Because you do, if you can go fast enough. And oh, what didn't we do? Watch what happens now. All right. It's a huge mistake. And you'll notice I left some of the sticks out of some of the trees, and that's on purpose. Some of the smaller ones, I just said, you know what? We're not going to put any branches in them. They're pretty tiny, and
Are you tiny shaming those trees?
hmm?
Are you tiny shaming the trees?
Am I tying to what?
Tiny shaming.
Tiny shaming.
Yeah, it's I am too. Strange world. Strange world.
That's strange world, just strange people.
It's well, no, I'm old enough to know that there was a lot of behavior that I participated in the 70s and 80s that as of the 2020s, I'm not particularly proud of. But it was not considered unusual at the time. Doesn't make it right, but I would, all right, the advantage I had when I was your age, of course, when I was your age, the drinking age was 18. That was exciting. Nobody had phones or cameras that they would bring to partying events.
Glory days.
And that's a good thing for me. Because believe me, a lot of what happened in the 80s, I really don't want a permanent record of. So that spared me a lot. But, I got to have a talk with my kids. Actually, it was funny. Logan was applying for a soccer. He's going to play on a club soccer team as part of the school, but it's Seacoast United, or I think it's Seacoast United, Seacoast. And they had they sent out a form and they sent out a little PowerPoint to review, and they talked about social media. And the school talks about social media, and it's like, be careful what you put out there. Especially kids maybe want to go to college, and and my son is a wonderful kid, but he's 14. They don't really have a brain, and and this stuff is permanent. And at least he tells us, we've seen some of the text conversation that he's been not involved in, but his friends have been having. And the good news for him, well, one, again, no brain. He's been caught at least 4 times texting stuff that he wouldn't want his mother to see. The first time, it's not a problem because he didn't know that his mother could see all the texts. But by the 3rd time, you'd think, Logan, you got to know she's looking at these texts, buddy. But his friends have said some pretty horrible stuff, and I don't know where it comes from. It's just really bad. And as a 9th grader or an 8th grader, I said some pretty horrible stuff. It's just I didn't commit it to writing, and then put it in a medium that's forever.
Yep.
So, all right, I'm going to leave that at that.